Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back here at the Daviess County Museum talking with Mrs. Cavanaugh from Cannelburg, Indiana. In our last segment, Mrs. Cavanaugh, you were explaining to us the process of a silk screen printing.
Yes.
And I think you were about to show us something else about this particular piece.
Well, the other one was kind of serious. We were talking about the process of silk screen prints. But I put on the back of this one, not permanently, but just on the back, so that you could see one that's just kind of fun without a lot of technology involved. And its process is transparency in this case. And what I did was, from my original drawing of our cat, #1 cat, by the way, I was able to make a transparency from the drawing on the computer. And then from the transparency, I could expose it on the silk screen again. And from there, I could make the print just for fun. And so here the registration was an artist proof. And I think I told you the artist proof
Yes.
could be more valuable than just the numbered sequence of those.
So let's go back and talk about the artist proof. So if someone is collecting silkscreen prints, you're telling us that if they see it's AP, correct?
Yes.
In the left-hand corner.
Artist proof.
That piece with that marking in the left-hand corner may be more valuable
Yes.
than other
Yes.
prints of that particular piece.
It could be, maybe not necessarily, but yes, it could be. That's what our serigraph teacher, explained to us then. And as I was showing you, Bruce, Ken can see this, I think, but when you look at the cat from this angle, he will be looking at you. And if you turn it this way, he's still looking right at you. And if you turn it again, he's still looking at you. So how this happens, I can't really tell you, but it's kind of amazing to me that it actually does happen. That he's looking at you no matter where you're standing, or looking at him. So.
Now you've brought some other pieces of art with you here today, and
Yes.
we have the services of the director, Becky Crimp, to display these other pieces, and perhaps you can show us what you have.
Yes. Do you have it? Okay. Well, this is an oil painting, and actually it's in Daviess County. And
Is
I
that
know,
right?
yes, for the Daviess County Historical Society, I thought it'd be appropriate.
Now you told us this morning when you came in, and this is the good news for our members, that you intend to donate this
That's
piece
right, yes.
to the Daviess County Museum.
Right, yes.
Well, we appreciate that very much.
So you have another Art League member then from the original group.
Yes, we do. So
So-
tell us about what medium of art this is, and
Okay.
what it depicts.
Yes, well, it's an oil painting, and actually I have to talk about my main teacher in painting landscapes and oil paintings particularly, and his name was Keith Ward. Now, I took workshops from him in the wintertime out in California, and Keith had been an illustrator in his early years before he became a serious landscape and portrait artist, and he was the illustrator for a good many of the businesses, such as Texaco, the Dalmatian pups, for example. If you remember those, they're all lively and scooting around, wonderful illustrations. In fact, he did the one of the first editions of the Dick and Jane series.
Is that right?
The Readers, yes. So he did all the illustrations for that. And then some of his others, the book Black Stallion
Oh yes.
of the 1941 edition.
Yes.
Those are all his illustrations that are in there.
So when
black
did you
and
take
white.
Mr. Ward's class? When was that?
I don't have the dates of that, but it would have been early after we were here.
So it was in 1970s, perhaps?
No, maybe 80s.
I see.
Around in there, I would think.
And is that when you started painting with oils?
In
at that time?
oils, seriously again. In, earlier years I had painted in oils, but yes. But Keith was so enthusiastic about painting. In fact, I wrote down a couple of quotes. This was from, on the internet I found, it's called Keith Ward of All Arts. and it was a 2007 interview that she had with Keith. And he said, "I have fun. There is that inner spark of excitement with each painting that I cannot imagine myself as being bored." And that's very true of Keith. And in our workshops with Keith, I remember his saying, paint with vigor. And so we tried. And then he also said, make something happen. So that was kind of his attitude in helping us do our oil paintings. But his technique, which has helped me through the years, would be, let's suppose you have a blank canvas in front of you. And you think, now here's a blank canvas, what am I going to do? And so you can be intimidated by that. And so instead he says, cover the whole thing, first of all, with a color on it. Take a light blue, for example. Swish around all this color in any directions. And then take a different opposing color for let's say a tan or a light brown. And then again, go through all of that. And then you already have something on your canvas that you're not so worried about starting a little tiny thing on a blank canvas. So that's the way I've tried to do with each of my paintings.
So let's go back to your oil painting. And again,
I did that, by the way.
I was going to ask you when you started this particular piece.
Yes.
So you didn't necessarily know when you started what exactly you were going to paint.
No, I knew what I was going to paint, but I would use his technique of doing that background part of the different colors. But then from there, what you can do, if you know what you're going to paint, with that same brush or sometimes paper towel that he would use, in that same color, that first color that you put on, you can kind of put in basically where these shapes are going to be, and then you can begin working it up from there.
I see. Kathleen,
Yes.
in regard to this particular piece
Yes.
that you prepared, can you enlighten us or tell us how long it took you to prepare this particular oil painting?
Well, in hours, I really can't tell you that, but I can tell you that usually I would work stages, so many hours a day, let's say. Maybe not a whole hour a day, but sometimes I would be a couple hours a day. So I would start with that initial wash-in that we talked about. That would be the first stage, let's say. The second stage would be working in the next day of some basic shapes and refining maybe what I had done the first day. And then I would stop, I would study it, I would take it out into the other room, live with it for a while I was watching TV or something else, and then come back the next day and take the next stage. So some of them I had about 7 stages until I felt, yes, I think I can sign it now. So how many stages this was? Maybe 6, let's say.
I see. So
Number
we're
of
talking
hours, I
about
guess.
over several days then.
Oh, yes, yeah, but not steady several days.
Now,
but
do
a
you
session.
always just work on one painting at a time?
Usually, yes.
Or do you have different
No.
paintings going on at the
No,
same?
one's enough for me, I think.
I see.
Bruce.
I see.
Yeah.
I think you have some other pieces that you'd like to share with us.
Okay. Let's see that. It's that one. This one.
And again, this is one of your pieces, correct?
Yes.
All right. Could you tell us what this is, please?
This is watercolor painting. Again, that was oil painting we just looked at.
And watercolor again is an entirely different medium
Absolutely,
than oil
yes.
or screen printing.
Yes. And to me, I think watercolor painting is more difficult than the other mediums.
And why is that?
Because once your paint is down, you can't go back and lighten it. So you have to remember your light parts in the first place,
I see.
and then try to avoid doing anything else over that, and then work up the dark ones into it. And also, Bruce, you can't really blend as you could with oil paintings or acrylic paintings, or even the pastels to a sense. But watercolor, pretty much what you put down is what it's going to be.
So watercoloring, for those who are thinking about painting, is more challenging, perhaps.
I think so, yes.
see.
Yeah.
And so, how long? This lady that's depicted in the portrait, who is that?
Well, that's my mother when she would have been about 20 years old, I would say.
And what was her name?
And so Annie Richards, but she was Ann Smith in those days. My mother and her family came from England,
Is that right?
My father and his family came from Scotland,
I see.
so I'm a first generation American, I guess you might say. But yeah, so in England, my Aunt Jenny, her sister, made almost all of my mother's clothes. So here she made the outfit that my mom is wearing. And this hat, which was in the style of the time, which had been early, let's see, 1915, maybe around that time. They had the feathers in the hats, and so very carefully, while the paint was still wet, I was able to drag out enough of the feathers there to indicate the feather in her hat there.
So I take it you painted this portrait of your mother from a photograph or
Yes,
from
of
memory?
course, yes. Mhm.
I see.
That would have been, and it had been a sepia photograph, I think, at that time. And so from there, you make up the colors, you make up most everything else, but I hope I captured her look.
Well, she's lovely,
Thank
and
you,
I think
yes.
she would have been very
Yeah.
proud of your work.
And even in her later years, I painted her when she was in her 90s, I think.
Is that correct?
And Beth, you've seen that one. I think that turned out pretty well.
Well, it's
I
a
did
lovely
bring it.
piece, and I have to tell you, Mrs. Cavanaugh, I enjoy all types of, I admire all types of artist work, but watercolor I think is probably
Oh,
my
really?
favorite.
Oh,
So I'm very
great.
fond of this one
Oh.
especially.
Thank you.
So you have another piece that you want to show
Yes,
us.
okay, either one. It's the wood panel, I think, Beth. Oh, that's fine, yes.
So this is again another one of your pieces, correct?
Yes, and this is another medium. I tried to bring an example of the 5 different mediums that I usually work in.
Okay.
So this one is a pastel painting.
All right, now,
Yes.
some of us, or some of our viewers may not understand what a pastel is. Please explain that.
Pastel is basically a hard chalk, but it's not considered just drawing with a piece of chalk. It really is a medium that is used to make more serious pastel paintings, they call them. Not pastel drawings, but they're actually paintings.
So if I've cataloged some items on our collection, I've called it a pastel drawing, that's incorrect.
I would say so, yes.
All right, I'll go back and change those, Mrs.
And
Cavanaugh.
also I had a wonderful instructor for this. Her name was Helen Van Wyck in Palm Springs. This was one of the winters that we were out in Palm Springs. And I had private lessons from Helen every week. And so she was excellent. And one thing I thought I would show you or talk about, you think, well, pastel painting, you use the red color, use the blue, you use the hair color. But I thought you'd be interested in hearing some of the colors that are actually used in making a pastel portrait.
Yes, please.
So, salmon pink, light ochre, ivory, rose pink, pistachio green, Veronese green, crimson, viridian green, olive green, light blue, and violet. And so those are some of the colors that you would use for pastel paintings. So it's not just a simple thing. It really is takes a lot of blending to get the flesh tones mainly.
And I think pastels, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to be careful about how you mount and display a pastel, do you not? Is there
Yes.
some concerns about that with
Yes,
pastel
there is.
paintings?
In this case, the mat is keeping it away from the glass a little bit, but often you would have the frame with let's say, 1/4 of an inch balsa wood, for example, placed in the rabbet of the frame so that the painting is not against the glass, the pastel, because it will come off if it's pressed. But normally, I think when Keith Ward was, again, teaching us about pastel, by the way, besides just the oil
Yes.
with Keith Ward, he said it's very sturdy, and you could hit that, and it won't hurt it, the paint won't come off. But if you rubbed it against something, that would bring it off. So you try to keep the pastel portrait away from the glass when you're framing it.
Yeah, I went online one time because we have a couple of pastels in our collection.
Yeah.
That I don't know if this is an accurate description,
Okay.
that you could seal a pastel painting or cover it
yeah.
in some fashion to protect it. Is that accurate? Are you familiar with that?
Well, there is a spray that you can use. It's called, I think, like a retouch spray, very lightly, and that might make it a little more less susceptible to rubbing off. But no, I don't know what you mean by covering it, really.
But what you're telling our viewers is if they have or if they purchase a pastel drawing,
painting.
a painting, I'm sorry, that they need to be careful about how it is mounted.
Oh,
and how it-
absolutely.
I
Yes,
see.
absolutely.
All right. Well, Ken's given us a high sign that our time period for this segment is expired, so we'll have
Yes.
to take a break here and come
All
back
right.
later.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.